You likely miss the outlier events that move the needle the most. The most important event in historical data are the big outliers, the record-breaking events. They are one, what move the needle, needle in the economy and the stock market. The Great Depression, World War II, the dot-com bubble, September 11th, the housing crash of the mid 200s. A handful of outlier events play an enormous role because they influence so many unrelated events in their wake. 15 billion people were born in the 19th and 20th centuries, but try to imagine how different the global economy and the whole world would be today if just seven of them never existed. Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, Gavrilo Princip, Thomas Edison, Bill Gates, Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King. I am not even sure that's the most meaningful list, but almost everything about the world today, from borders to technology to social norms, would be different in if these seven people hadn't left their mark. Another way to put this is that 0.00000000004% of 0.000000004% of people were responsible for perhaps of majority of the world's directions over the last country. The same goes for project innovations and events. Imagine the last country without the Great Depression, World War II, the Manhattan Project, vaccines, antibiotics, arpents, September 11th, the fall of the Soviet Union. How many projects and events? How many projects and events occurred in the 20th country? Billion, trillion, who knows? But those it alone impact the world order upon order of magnitude more than others. The thing that makes tail events easy to under appreciate is how easy it is to underestimate how things compound. How, for example, it is to underestimate how things compound. How, for example, 9/11 pro- promo- prompted the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates, which helps drive the housing bubble, which led to the financial crisis, which led to a poor jobs markets, which led tens of millions to seek a college education, which led to $1.6 trillion in students loans with a 10.8 percentage default rate. It's not intu- intuitive, intuitive to link 19th hijackers to the current weight of student loans, but that's what happens in the world driven by a few outlier their events. The majority of what's happening at my given moment in the global economy can be tied back to a handful of past events that were nearly impossible to predict. The most common plot of economic history is the role of surprise. The reason surprise occur is not because our models are wrong or our intelligence is low. It's because the odds that Adolf Hitler's parents argued on the evening 9 months before he was born, the same as that conceiving a child technology is hard to predict, because Bill Gates may have died from polio if John's Salk got Carnegie and gave up on his quest to find a vaccine. The reason we couldn't predict the student loan growth is because an airport security guard may have confiscated a hijacker's knife on 9th and 11th. That's all there is to it. The problem is that we often use events like that Great Depression and World War II to guide our view of things, like worst case scenarios when thinking about future investment returns. But those record settings event had no precedent when they occur. So the forecaster who accumulates the worst and best event of the past will match the worst and best event of the future in not following history. They're accidentally assuming that the history of unprecedented events doesn't apply to the future. Nassim Taleb writes in his book Full, Fooled by Redom- Redomness in Pharaonic Egypt. Scribes tracked the high water mark of the Nile and used it as an estimate estimate for a future worst case scenario. Scenario. The same can be seen in the Fukushima nuclear reactor, which experienced a catastrophic failure in 2011 when a tsunami tsunami struck. It had been built to withstand the worst past historical earthquake, with the builder not imagining much worse and not thinking that the first past event had to be a surprise, as it had no precedent. This is not a failure of analysis, it's a failure of imagination. Realizing the future might not look anything like the past is a specially kind of skills that is not generally looked highly upon by the financial forecasting community. At a 2017 dinner I attend in New York, Daniel Kahneman was asked how investors should respond when our forecasters are wrong. He said, whenever we are surprised by something, even if we admit that we made a mistake, we say, "Oh, I'll never make the mistakes again." But in fact, what you should learn when you make a mistakes because you did not anticipate something is that the world is difficult to anticipate. That's the correct lesson to learn from surprise. That the world is surprising. The correct lesson to learn from surprise is that the world is surprising. Note that we should use past surprise as a guide to future boundaries. That we should use past surprises as an admission that we have no idea what might happen next. The most important economic events of the future, things that will move the needle the most, are things that history give us a little to no guide about. They will be unprecedented events. Their unprecedented nature means we won't be prepared for them, which is a part of what makes them so impactful. This is the this is true for both scary events like recessions and wars and great events like innovation. I am confident in that predicament because surprise moving the needle the most is the one forest forecast that's been accurate at a vertically ever, every point in history. History can be a misleading guide to the future of the economic and stock market because it doesn't account for structural changes that are relevant to today's world. Consider a few big ones. The 41K is 42 years old. The Roth IRA is younger, created in the 1990s. So personal financial advice and analysis about how Americans save the retirement today is not directly comparable to what made sense just a generation ago. We have new options, things change. Or take venture capital. It barely excited 25 years ago. There are single venture capital funds today that are larger than the entire in industry was a generation ago. 14 in his memory memoir, Nick founder Phil Knight wrote about his early days in business. There was no such thing as a venture capital, and aspi- aspiring aspiring young enter entrepreneur had very few places to turn, and those places were all guarded by risk. Average gatekeepers with zero imagination in other world bankers. What this means in effect is that all historical data going back just a few decades about how startups are financed finance is out of date. What we know about investment cycles and startup failure rate is not deep base of history to learn from because they were compare companies are funded today is such a new historical paradigm. Or take public markets. The S&P 500 did not include financial stock unit till 1976. Today, financial make up 16% of the index. Technology stock were virtually non-existent 15 years ago. Today, there are more than a fifth of the index. Accounting rules have changed over time. So have disclosures, uh, editing, and the amount of marketing liquidity. Things change the most between use. Recipients has changed dramatically over the last 150 years. US economy recession. The average time between recessions has grown from about half year in the late 18th to 5 year in the early 20th century to higher over the last half century. As one writes this, it look like we're going into recession 12 years since the last recession began in December 2007. That's the longest gap between recessions since before the Civil War. There are plenty of theories on why recessions have become less frequent. On one is that the Fed is better at managing the business cycle, or at least extending it. Another is that heavy industry is more prone to boom and bust overproduction than the service industries that dominate the last 15 years. The pessimistic view is that we now have fewer recessions once, but when they occur, they are more powerful than before. For our argument, it doesn't particularly matter what cues the change. What matters is that things clearly change. To show how these historic changes should affect investing decisions, consider the work of many believed to be one of the greatest investment mind of the all time, Benjamin Graham's classic book, The Intelligent Investor, is more than theory. Gives a partial direction like formulas investor can use to make smart investing decisions. I read Gra- Graham's book when I was a teenager learning about investing for the first time. The formulas president present in the book were applying to me because they were literally step by step instruction on how to get rich. Just follow the instruction. It seemed too easy, but something because clear when you try applying some of these formulas. Few of them actually work. Graham's Graham advocate purchasing stock trending for less than their networking assets, basically cash in the bank. Menus all debates. These sound great, but few stocks actually trade that cheaply anymore, other than say a penny stock accused of accounting for fraud. One of Graham's criteria instructs conservative investor to avoid stocks trending for more than 1.5 times book value. If you follow this rule over the last decade, you would have owned almost nothing but insurance and bank stocks. There is no world where that is okay. The intelligent investor is one of the greatest investing books of all time, but I don't know a single investor who has done well in implementing Graham's published formulas. The book is full of wisdom, perhaps more than any other investment book ever published, but as a how-to guide, it's questionable at best. What happened was Graham, a showman who sounded good but whose advice didn't work, not at all. He was a widely successful investor himself, but he was partial and he was a true constraint. He wasn't so wedded to investing ideas that he'd stick with them when too many other investors caught onto those theories, making them so popular as to render their potential useless. useless Jason Zhu and noted a later version of Graham's book once wrote. Graham was constantly experimenting and restart retesting his assumptions and seeking out what worked, not what worked yesterday but what worked today. In each re- revised editions of the Intelligent Investor, Graham discarded the formulas he presented in the previous editions and replaced them with new ones, declaring in a sense that those do not work anymore or they do not work as well as they used to. These are the formulas that seem to work better now. One of the common criticisms made of Graham is that all the formulas in the 1972 editions are antiquate. The only proper response to these criticisms is to say, of course, they are the ones he used to replace the formulas in the 1965 editions, which replaced the formulas in the 1954 edition, which in turn replaced the ones from the 1949 edition, which were used to augment the original formulas that he presented in Security Always in 1934. Graham did in 1976 if the formulas he advocated were discarded and updated a few times between 1934 and 1972. How relevant do you think they are in 2020 or will be in 2015? Just before he did Graham was asked whether a detailed analysis of individual stock static he became famous for reminded a strategy he forward. He answered in general, no, I am no longer an advocate of elaborate techniques of security analysis in order to find superior value opportunity. This was a rewarding activity. Say 14 years ago, when our textbook was first published, but the situation has changed a great deal since the 41. What changed was competition grave as opportunities became known. Technology made information more accessible, and industries change as economic shift for industries or technology sectors which have different business cycle and capital uses. Things change. An interesting query of investing history is that the further further back you look, the more likely you are to be examining a world that no longer applies to today. Many investors and economists take comfort in knowing their forecasts are backed up decades, even centuries of data. But since economic evolve, recent history is often the best guide to the future future because it's more likely to include important conditions that are relevant to the future. There's a common phr- phrase in investing usually used mockingly that it's different this time. If you need to rebut someone who's predicting the future won't perfectly mirror the past, say, oh, so you think it's different this time, and drop the mic. It comes from investor John Templeton's view that the four most dangerous world in the investing are it's a different time this time. Templeton thoughts though admitted that it different at let's 20% of the time the world changes. Of course it does, and those changes are what matter most. Over time, Michael Betnick put it the 12 most dangerous world in the investing are the four most dangerous world in the investing are it's different this time. That doesn't mean we should ignore history when thinking about money, and but there's an important nuisance. The future back in history, you 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 look uh, you look the more general. You takeaways should be general things like people's relationship to greed and fear, how they behave under stress, and how they respond to incentives tend to be stable in time. The history of money is useful for that kind of stuff, but specific trends, specific sectors, specific causal relationship about markets and what people should do with their money are always an example of evolution in progress. Historians are not prophets. The question then is, how should we think about and plan for the future? Let's take a look in the next chapter. Thank you.